I have about 20 slides and about 20 minutes to get through them all. But this is really about questions that you guys have. And so I will try not to, you have the handout with all of the ratings, I'll try not to read them to you and give you the highlights, but also make sure that you have some time for questions. So we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today. I will give you a little bit of background on me. You heard earlier about my fraternal activity and professionally. I'm the Senior Vice President for Community Bank. I have been banking for 26 years and I have never done anything else. Well, other than I managed a trading post at Boy Scout camp when I was a teenager, which was a life-changing experience, but didn't end up kind of being my career path. I thought I wanted to do retail for a while, and I actually worked in retail and decided I didn't want to do retail. So I've been in banking all that time. I started as an intern and just kept on. I've never written a letter of resignation. I've worked for 3 different banks, but none of that was my choosing. It was all divestitures, mergers and acquisitions, and things like that. So I've had a good run of it. My career and what I've done for Delta Sig has kind of gone like this. I really don't know whether I give more back to the fraternity or whether I get more from the fraternity. As far as development goes, they kind of weave in between each other just because of all the fun stuff that I've done. I've never considered myself a fundraiser, and now I'm president of the Leadership Foundation, whose job is to what? Raise money. That's one function, only. Really raise money and then give it all back. So it's been a stretch for me, and I enjoy that. Personally, I am also married to an IOU, to Delta Sig. Talk about an organization that changes the course of your life permanently and forever and in ways that you can only imagine. Any of you guys seen the movie, Christmas movie? I know you've all seen it. It's a Wonderful Life. Don't store. That guy, right? George Bailey is the character that he plays. And I remember at some point in the movie he says, "Clarence, I wish I was never born." Right? And Clarence makes it so that he's never been born. I play that game with Delta Sig all the time. You know, Clarence, I wish I'd never pledged. I wish I'd never pledged, Clarence. And just to see what it would be like, because I can't even begin to play with what it was like. Just have some illusion mind after 25 years. So that's about me personally. What we're going to talk about today is the term loosely called professionalism. What is it? What does it look like? What does it sound like? How does it read? We're going to talk about fun stuff like drinking on the job. You guys ready for that? You ready for drinking on the job? You have to face alcohol all the time as a college student. We'll talk about it. You have to face it as a professional. And we'll talk about how it relates to, how professionalism relates to your image on campus and as an organization as well. Because we face an uphill battle all the time because we're a professional fraternity. And I'll say this later. A lot of people think that's an oxymoron, right? What do you mean? You mean you drink and haze people professionally? That's what you do? Really? You're trained to do this? So we've got an uphill battle to face because people hear fraternity and the first thing you think about are those horrible stories that they would read in the Sunday paper about fraternity that haze somebody and they die and they're in court now and everybody's wages are garnished for the rest of their life and all those horrible stories. So we've got our own image to manage as a professional organization, one that carries the word fraternity in its name. So professionalism, what is it? And here's a definition of focused, accountable, confident, competent motivation toward a particular goal. Note that the words less the emotion come in at the end, and we will talk about that in a bit. It doesn't mean that you are not emotional, that you are not passionate about a subject. You just simply figure out how to deal with that emotion in a professional way, right? It shows respect for everybody, but at the same time keeps them at a very high level. So some of this is just academic to you guys because everybody's dressed really, really well. As a matter of fact, you all are dressed more like bankers today than I'm dressed like a banker. My excuse is that, I just turned 47. I turned 47 on Founders Day. I had the same birthday as a fraternity. And I said, you know what? I'm in my late 40s now. I dress like you guys do every day. And I can take Saturday off. I can wear a tweed jacket and call it professional dress. So that's just me. But you guys look fabulous. And you're here doing the music things like that. So you like that. That huge kind of walk on half the world as far as what it means to look good. But a lot of this comes in with, in banking, we are still all about relationships, even though we're selling a lot of stuff we might consider commodities, like money, for example. But the willingness to please customers and coworkers and to respect everybody around you respect for everyone around you is a serious, serious piece of professionalism, right? And that means everybody from, the guy in Quick Trip who's running you out to the CEO. If you treat all of those people with the same level of respect and demeanor, you simply cannot go along. That's just the way it is. So that's about how it looks. How does it feel? Well, do you think successful people don't have stress in their lives anymore? Probably not. They probably have quite a bit of it, actually. It just comes with the territory. Even the best professionals have stress in their lives. But we try to learn to leave out outbursts and some of the emotion that can come with those passionate decisions. Maintaining our proper focus and urgency and responsibility toward a specific goal. And I have seen a lot of, I work on a lot of what I'll call moderately complex financial transactions, and just what I do at the bank. And inevitably, about every third or fourth transaction, we get somebody on the transaction team, one of the lawyers or one of the principals of the business that's looking at this financing or something, who gets really, really passionate and who will go off the proverbial deep end. And you learn a lot from watching them, and you say, gosh, I don't want to do that. But where you learn more is from the other professionals in the room who manage to keep an even keel and manage to not go there with that person. That is an amazing thing to watch, where you see somebody go off the deep end, and then you see somebody else on the conference call in the meeting that you're at, bring it back around and find the middle ground again. And that is a miraculous thing. It's really fun to watch, and it's really fun to be that person. That's fun too. That's right. All right. That's right.
You guys need the doors open here? We're getting a door alarm.
You're getting a door alarm?
Yeah.
If you do what you need to do, if you need to close them, we'll open back up when we leave.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And again, here's that. I love this phrase: respecting the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Okay, so professionalism. How does it sound? How many of you guys are working? How many of your students? Even working? Working in an office where you might have a voicemail box. You have a voicemail on the phone now, so, right? That's okay. So, your voicemail message is brief and upbeat. The cutesy voicemail message is probably for the interview for jobs, and we're giving out that number you dispense with. The cute messages, like the one, even the one I have at home is, something in my English accent. I say, we're not here right now, but we're all going to cross the road for a half. Leave us a message and we'll call you back. All right, you do that at home, but that's not the one that's on my personal cell phone. Phone is important. A lot of folks do use it. Be very careful when you use a speakerphone in your office or at home. Make sure you return those phone calls. That is an art that is lost on people from all kinds of generations, but it will get you noticed if you return the phone calls properly. Because most people are not expecting you to do it, and you will automatically beat their expectations by returning those calls properly. We have a thing at the bank called the sunset rule, that if somebody leaves you a message, that you need to return that voicemail message by the time the sun goes down that day. Even if it's just to tell them, I got your message, we got really busy this afternoon, I will re-listen to it again tomorrow and try to help you with your problem. Right? Even just to acknowledge that this person's left you a message is a good thing, and will score you points right off the bat. So sunset rule is what we call it. And we all love our devices, right? And we use them all the time. And I'm as guilty of this as anybody. But it's important when you're on the phone with the client that you're not turning on the task, that you're focused in on what they do and what they're saying. So put down the device and pay attention. Communication, skills in both writing and speaking. So you're getting a lot of very careful practice with that. And if you're doing a lot of writing in your classes, and I hope you are. And if you're doing a lot of speaking in your classes, and I hope you're doing that too, invaluable in the business community. But to the extent you can get practice with stepping before a group of people that you don't know, not your chapter or maybe even your school, but the opportunity to speak in front of people that are strangers to you. To become comfortable with that, you always want to have some level of nerve, but to become comfortable with that is a big skill that I encourage you to do. Writing is somewhat lost, and we'll talk about how this is how we text is morphing into how we email, and how we need to kind of bring back the business element of business writing. And so we'll talk about that here in a bit. Client service is very important for us at the bank because we're client-facing. We're always listening to our clients and watching our clients. And meeting them face-to-face is a big thing. So here's just some tips on when you're meeting with clients personally, you can pull those into your own situations. Confidentiality. This is a big deal in my business because all of the financial information that I handle at work, none of it belongs to me, and honestly, not very much of it belongs to the company. Most of it belongs to the people that we're dealing with and the companies that we're dealing with. And so there's automatically a sense of trust in when you are housing in your four walls and in your virtual computers. A lot of personal information that people would not want out. Their names, their social security numbers, the names of their family, maybe the social security numbers of some of their family members that are also in their accounts. You may be housing information about what their personal income is, about how they made their living, how much taxes they paid last year, and in the personal trust area, which is not really working, but there's just a lot of information about investments and things like that. The point is, that information is entrusted to us. And to the extent we let it out of our hands, either because we're careless or because we do it intentionally, that's all a breach of confidentiality, which can come with very serious circumstances, especially if you are headed for a job in anything that has to do with the public, or that has to do with healthcare, or it has to do with finance. And I've just covered about half of the economy right there. So, and honestly, if you're going to be in the IT world too, right? Data security, big issue. So there we go, 2/3 of the economy. So consequences, market-sensitive information. There are rules against disclosure of those things. You can be subpoenaed by the SEC. You can go on trial. You can be in jail for breach of confidentiality in certain sectors. Medical information is a whole other gamut. We passed the act. We talk about HIPAA, right? HIPAA guarantees the privacy of people's medical records across a whole variety of situations, and including as a manager or as an employer, you're actually not supposed to disclose any of your employees' health conditions without violating this act, HIPAA. So confidentiality becomes really important. But some of the soft ways, how do you put a price on or value on reputation? If your bank is on the front page of the newspaper, that's there are a million social security numbers and their related account numbers on a laptop that was stolen from a Bank of America employee at an airport, right? And somehow this person was able to get into this laptop and to mine those million social security numbers tied to those million checking numbers. How do you put a value on what that bank lost in reputation that day? You really can't. You can't put a dollar value on that. But it's really, really important that you protect not only your reputation, but that of the company. So professionalism away from work, it doesn't leave. It never leaves us once you're a professional, because we continue to contribute in our industries. We continue to act in our communities. We do it right now as members of this fraternity. Right? We represent this fraternity, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the slides. And your job generally to make the world better while you're still here is a big deal. And so how you do that professionally, professionalism spills over into every aspect of your life. It's just not about how you conduct yourself at work. All right, so a little bit about email. Please avoid overuse of emails. We see a lot of folks at the bank that overuse the CC. You know, where you have to read through 50 emails to figure out at the end finally, why am I receiving all these and what does it have to do with me? And it usually doesn't have anything to do with you. So be judicious about that. I want to tell you about the PUF method. And a little thing at the bank we also have called the two-reply policy. It's not really a policy, it's more of a practice. I have a customer who is a little bit older than I am. He's probably in his early 50s. And his name is Dan, and he says, I prefer the PUF method. I say, Dan, what's PUF? It stands for pick up the freaking phone. And so whenever I know from that, because Dan has strong feelings about it, I can hear that, okay, maybe Dan doesn't like to use email a lot. Maybe Dan would prefer to call him. He will send you things, and you can send him things, but if he wants to have a conversation with you, he will not type 2 paragraphs of email. He will call you on the phone. Don't be afraid to do that, especially if you're professionally working with folks who are maybe in an earlier generation, who may be baby boomers, or who may be older than that even, or Gen Xers even. We still have a preference for using the telephone. When I was a teenager growing up, and I'm close to this now, my daughter is 12, she's texting all the time, right? She never talks on the telephone, she never gets phone calls, but she's texting all the time. When I was a teenager, after about 8 o'clock, we were on the phone, and we could be on the phone for 2-3 hours. We didn't text, but that was our gig. So we grew up, and I'm a late baby boomer, early Gen Xer, right? We grew up on the phone. And so the phone's a very comfortable space for us. And a lot of us are comfortable with texting people, that's fine. But where we grew up was on the phone. And so that's where we kind of have to go back to sometimes when we move on. Okay, so be careful with what you put in emails. You can have wrong tone to them. I put this little thing in here that says, email is still formal business communication, right? You are not at home. You might text that way, but if you were to write that in an email, it makes it look somewhat disrespectful and unprofessional, in my opinion. I read The Myth of the Delete Key. If you think if I delete this email, it's gone, I delete this message, it's gone, in a professional environment, you're in a dream. All of those things are kept, they are stored, they can be analyzed, they can be retrieved even after their archival period is done. Everything you write, think of it as a permanent record, because effectively it is. It can be subpoenaed, it can be discovered, you can be asked on the witness stand 5 years later, what did you mean when you wrote this seemingly nasty thing about this customer in this email? And it can make a big difference. So just be very careful. Big Brother is always watching. My wife works for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. You know what she does? She's a fraud analyst. And you know how they catch most of their internal fraud? People stealing from the company who work there? Huh? Some from email. You want to know the biggest way they do it? They get into their Twitter account and find the people who are stealing are actually tweeting about it. But stealing is stupid, and one stupid thing leads to okay, big roads, always watch. So likewise, Katie gives the whole thing on your professional space and how to use that. Thank you, 5 minutes. So come back here in this room. You can actually, oh, she just walked in the room, and there she is. Katie is giving a whole session on how to use social media to get yourself a job. And so if you want more on that angle of things, then please come back to that. But I always use the thing, when I post anything on Facebook, and I am a Facebook user, I love it. What would your mom or grandma think of your space on Facebook, or your tweets, or things like that? So I never post anything that I wouldn't want, and grandmas are both gone now, but that I wouldn't want grandma to read, or that I wouldn't mind my mother reading. Yeah, okay, that'll pass. That's usually the test. Sometimes I get a little into the double entendre, but mom wouldn't pick up. Oh, and I promised you, of course, that we would talk about drinking. Right? I told you that we would talk about drinking on the job. Alcohol is just a fact of life. Okay, whether you partake in it or whether you don't, in most organizations, in most social situations, the chances of it being present are pretty good. Okay, and that doesn't stop just because you leave college. So, unlike the Republic of Ireland, where my ancestors are from, alcohol is a normal part of socializing in the United States, but being drunk is not. Okay? And so you have to figure out what that means for you and where you have to draw the line based on where your company is. The open bar is not a free-for-all. I recommend if you're a drinker and you can handle 2 drinks, that you stick to that. And if you can't handle 2 drinks, you shouldn't drink at those functions, and that's perfectly fine. Get noticed in the office, not in the bar. And if you don't believe that client or that risk management happens only in our fraternity, every company has risk management policies too. And some of them you would find relatively familiar based on what you know about fraternities, risk management policies, and some of them you may not like. Humor at work. Work is too important to be taken seriously. But at the same time, there are definite lines in the sand that you should not cross, and those are generally ethnicity, race, religion, orientation, politics. I put in college sports teams, which is not a big deal for me, but for my boss, this is right up there with religion and politics. You just don't discuss college sports teams at work because it starts too many nasty conversations. So, a couple minutes on the professional image. I talked earlier about the steep slope that we have as a professional fraternity, right? And that you see all of these horrible things written about what happens at the fraternities, and especially with respect to initiation, with respect to recruiting, the hazing that is going on. If you just read what the newspapers say about fraternities, you would think that we all did this, right? But so that's always a big thing, and so fighting that image on your campus, think about how it affects your community relations, your job opportunities, your reputation on campus, your ability to get things done. And your online image goes right into the fallout. It's increasingly important every day. So I'm going to leave these. You have the handouts. This is kind of examples of being a professional versus being an amateur. I think all this is not lost on Delta States because you already know this, but it's a nice little chart, so we put some examples in for you. This is all up to you. You make the big difference. Never underestimate the power of one. I talked a little bit about if I had never pledged Delta Sigma Pi, what my life would be like. It's the power of one. It's one person that can make that difference in your life. When I think about the people who welcomed me at that first recruiting event and convinced me that I wanted to come back to the second recruiting event, those are the people, honestly, and I don't even remember who they were. I just remember that it happened. Those are the people, honestly, that changed my life in that whole January evening of 1986. So it's up to you. You can make a huge difference, and that's why you're here. And honestly, I think making a difference is what Delta Sigma Pi is all about. So we've got some what we would call sacred teachings about leaving this place a better place than where you found it. And so that is the mission that I leave with you. Go out and leave every place that you touch a little bit better than you find it. You will find that success that you seek if it's your quest to do it. So with that, you have my contact information. If you have any questions, I answer them. We have come to the end of our allotted time, but we still have this space in between. And the people who show up for the 2 o'clock seminar won't be here for another 4 minutes, so you actually have time to ask questions or just hang out. It was great to see all you guys. I'm really happy that you decided to spend your Saturday afternoon doing this when you could be out, running a 10K or a half marathon or something like that, because it's awfully nice weather to do that. But sure appreciate that you